This is the first of the review lectures to prepare students for the exams in microeconomics for the midterm or again in the end of the year for the final. We're going to cover different topics in different lectures. This one will have each one of them will have approximately 10 minutes of information. So each one will be a 10-minute capsulized segment of information for the exam. We'll have, I hope, a consistent theme throughout. This one is really about some of the definitional terms and introductory concepts that we have in microeconomics. So starting off, we're talking about why and how economists disagree or agree about the topics they discuss, about the theories they present. In simple format, we would say that the actual structure of the theory itself is something on which all economists should agree. And that concept about the theory, the nature of the theory itself, is called positive economics. In regard to positive economics, it's again, we differentiate with a simple example of turning on a light switch. If we were to say, well, when that switch is turned to the up position, the lights will go on, that's a statement about which all of us should agree, regardless of how we feel about whether or not we need more illumination. So to turn the light switch on puts the lights on. That's a positive type of statement. In economics, we would say the same thing, such as increasing interest rates by the Federal Reserve ought to, ceteris paribus, will decrease the amount of economic activity in society. And that's a statement of fact about which all economists should agree. That's a positive statement. A normative statement is one which expresses then some opinion. For example, I think that we need more light in this room in order to be more productive in our reading and studying habits. Well, now I'm advocating that the light go on to achieve some end. Same way we would say, apply that to the concept of the Federal Reserve. We might say, well, the Federal Reserve should raise interest rates because right now economic activity is at a level that is high enough to threaten some increase in the levels of inflation. And therefore, we ought to increase the interest rates to discourage activity in the economy. That now is a statement of opinion, is a normative statement. So we have positive versus normative economics. Typically, it's only one type of multiple choice question. The next thing we want to talk about is the underlying issue about why we need to study economics. What is the basic economic question? The question is that there are too few resources. There are finite resources for unlimited or infinite wants. And that's the problem with economics, that therefore we have to determine how and why we are going to allocate resources and goods to different individuals or parties in the economy, in our society. To do that, we have to first acknowledge that there's the scarcity creates or causes opportunity costs. And opportunity costs are represented by the analysis that anything we do is really a decision to not do something else. That the decision to do something is therefore not doing something else. That's the opportunity cost. So the cost of going to college is the foregone income that could have been earned at some other type of job. And that's what we mean by scarcity and opportunity cost. Very important concept. Working from scarcity and opportunity cost, knowing that the decision to do something is really a decision not to do something else, we now derive a way to depict that in a graphical form. So, for example, we have two-dimensional axis. We might draw here two different goods, and let's just imagine that these things are clothes, and over here we might put cars. Imagine we have a society that's making decisions, taking all of its resources, and allocating them either 100% into making cars or alternatively into making clothes, one or the other. And this society also can choose to allocate these partially into clothes or partially into cars. Now, the important concept here is to consider why and how the arithmetic combination of one or the other, the decision to do some of one or some of the other, has the shape that it does. For example, if we were to allocate all of our resources to only cars or only clothes, we would have points that look like that. And those represent all resources, all clothes and, oops, no cars, but this is that level of cars and no clothes. And those are the extrema of this situation where this society can only do one or the other. What we're trying to investigate here is what happens if society would like to have a mix. If society has a mix, well, should it look like this? That is possible, that is feasible, but only in society where all resources were equally productive in all pursuits. This says that the rate of change, the amount of cars that we forego to get clothes, and that concept, foregoing one to get the other, is the opportunity cost we just mentioned. Because of scarcity, that if we want more clothes, we must forfeit some of the cars. Well, that rate of transformation, that amount that we give up, in this situation with a straight line, a linear curve here, linear curve suggests that the rate of transformation is constant slope, as in the ability to take resources from cars and put them into clothes. Whatever that ability is the same all the way along the curve. That we never have a change in the productivity of these resources as they move from cars to clothes. But knowing that individuals and resources, land for example, and other resources really aren't equally productive at all things. Not every person is equally good at sewing clothes as maybe running engineering equations to design cars. To do that, then in class earlier in the year we discussed and understood why this rate of transformation is going to look like that. And that's a production possibility curve, PPC, production possibility curve. And it's bowed outward from the origin because not all resources are equally productive in all pursuits. We discussed that. That's an explanation that will be necessary and required and required on the exam somewhere, or the AP if not my exam. And it might be a multiple choice question or it might be something a little more extensive in an essay, but very important to note that definition. So that's the definition. And then the next question we ask about these production possibility curves is a comparison of some possible mixes of outputs. And very quickly, these sorts of points are in the two-dimensional space, frequently couched in a question that goes a little bit like this. It says, well, of these points, which one would be the best or which one would be possible? And it's important to understand that this point out here, which is beyond the PPC, production possibility curve, is not feasible. Infeasible point. Being beyond the curve means that it requires more resources than this society has. Can't do it. A point that's interior to the curve signifies an allocation of resources that gives us an amount of cars and clothes that, well, is feasible, but somehow is less. We either have fewer cars or fewer clothes or fewer of both of those than we would get if we moved out to the curve, which leaves us with the final deduction that it's only on the curve that this society uses all of its resources. And that's how we define efficiency for the society. We have opportunity costs about trade-off, but apart from that, we can represent efficient mixes of cars and clothes that use all resources. The next question, which is interesting, is what would be preferred by this society? We prefer this one or this one. Frequently the AP or test will put a point that's about in the middle of this curve, and that's which one would be preferred. Students sometimes mistakenly will think, well, a mix of resources provides people alternatives and choices, but really that's only valid for people who want a choice. If we have societies that prefer only clothes or only cars or predominantly one or the other, that would not be a preferred point. So given only the information on the PPC, our deduction is very clear and unmistakable. We can't tell what would be the preferred point. That's the end of this one. I'm going to continue on to the next mini lecture, and that'll be about comparative advantage, some other introductory topics yet again.